Hey there, jabronis. What's good? It's your boy Tris, wishing you bliss despite the story feeling like it's straight out of the apocalypse. So I'm out here dog sitting, and this is actually going to be a re-upload or re-recording, whatever you want to call it, because I recorded this video over a week ago. I've been trying my hand at video editing, but my old video was so long that I'm deleting things out of my phone. I've been deleting things on my phone, trying to make space, and there's like nothing left to delete. So I figured, fuck it, I'll just try and record a shorter video. So I'm going to read a lot less from the actual article and just try and do it quick and include clips that hopefully won't make the video as long as the other video was. But the point still stands. There's a lot of good videos I'm going to be linking in the description. Everything from Mr. Beer talking about transphobia to Pop Culture Detective talking about, just the nature of prisons and how jokes kind of fucking just minimize and normalize the shit out of like the violence there. There's even a Fox clip out there just to show you the way these things are being talked about and used. But again, I want to read a little bit of the article and the issue we're dealing with. If you saw the title, trigger warning, because discussions of sexual assault, transphobia, violence, all that. But basically, my roommate sent me a tweet that said, trans woman raped 14 times in men's prison, fine release after suing state twice. And it's actually an article that I'm linking in the description in Pink News by Chantel Bilson, and it's about Ashley Diamond, someone who's now 44, who spent already 10 years of her life in jail on a 12-year prison sentence and is finally getting out, but has to do the 2 remaining years of like on parole for not even stealing a saw, but her boyfriend stole a saw and then she tried to pawn it off, and for that 12 years. There's people who do murder and don't do time like that. But she said in the course of all that time she sued twice and has suffered sexual assault basically more than 14 times. And this is in Georgia. She sued the Georgia Department of Corrections in 2015, and they were rebuked by a federal court for their treatment of trans people over the abusive conditions she faced while in prison, and then sued again 2020 about how they failed to protect her from sexual assault and did not provide her with adequate health care while she was in prison. And she's finally being released, and she's happy to restart her life, wants to focus on music that's been helping her get through it. She's also worried about the people she's being left behind. Because if you didn't know, there's a long history of us making jokes about everyone from R. Kelly to Bill Cosby to Harvey Weinstein to maybe even Kevin Spacey, needing to make sure they don't drop the soap and have justice repaid to them. But the thing about that justice is that it's not justice, it's vengeance. And even if you think that's what the point of prison is for, fuck rehabilitation, at the end of the day, the people who are actually becoming victimized more often than not are queer men, trans people in prison, especially trans women, and men with mental disabilities.
While the vast majority of the comedy we've been looking at invokes the rape of straight men, in reality it's queer and transgendered prisoners who are most likely to be the targets of sexual assault in prison.
So basically, marginalized people who are, targeted for being taken advantage of and used however they want, because like we covered with the David Lose case that we covered on my channel, Holy Baloney Jabronis, sometimes the guards like to take part in that. They like to watch. They like to control people. Like in the case with David Lowe, where he took bribes from male prisoners, gave them the keys so they can go to female prison and just sexually and physically torment the female prisoners over there. And while they're screaming to the guards just watched. And then when they reported it, the guards would torture them and deprive them of sleep, leave the lights on, confiscate all their clothes and their hygienic utensils. And while Ashley Diamond's getting out, this is also reminiscent of a case we covered on Not Your Normal Discussion, podcast I'm on, about Demi Minor, who is famous in New Jersey prison for actually, impregnating two of her, fellow inmates, females, and she's a trans woman, and not just us, but other people were talking about like, the fuck, move her, and she was moved to men's prison, and it's talking about how she's been misgendered more than 30 times, how she was forcibly moved from the prison, and then subjected to like violence, actual like beating in the process of the transfer, and how she still faces physical and psychological torture, or at least violence and threats and intimidation. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's cool, that's okay. Like, even on the Fox, like, because looking at this to try and do the re-upload, I wanted to see if there's other things I can include to really break down how serious of an issue this is. And even when Fox has a white trans woman on, she sounds a lot like Hunter Schafer on some trans medicalist shit about how, hey, if you don't fully transition, then you shouldn't basically be considered either a trans woman, or you shouldn't be able to be in a prison with female prisoners.
I am of the belief that if you still have a penis, then you belong in a men's prison, even if it's in a protected unit.
There have been people who would identify themselves as transsexuals, which they see as a more serious, more committed version of a trans person, and people who identify on the binary. That's always been a clash.
And it's just like, listen, if you felt that you had to do like a transition in this way to be considered fully recognized as this, I'm not trans, I can't knock that. That's not for me to say. But to put that on marginalized people.
For years, transgender people had to assimilate into this very specific way of being transgender, have this very specific way of expressing their transness and experiencing dysphoria in order for them to gain access to hormones.
And then, of course, they're poor. They're poor people. And to act like this is justice is, again, the American way.
And Tex, that's what we had here in the city of Houston a few years back when the bathroom ordinance came up. This is the type of thing you guys were concerned about as conservatives out there.
Absolutely, and I was very excited to be the tip of the spear on that and to do my part. Obviously, Meredith Parker came after me. She didn't like me standing up for the real women and children of our city.
What?
I do acknowledge that some women in women's prisons aren't comfortable having people with penises in their female-only spaces.
But I don't feel like you belong in a female population where this sort of thing can and will happen.
Jamie, does this hurt your movement when people hear stories like this? Someone who says they are transgender female and then goes into a prison and get two females pregnant. Does that hurt those who are fighting for transgender rights?
Oh, it absolutely does.
However, in the ideal world that Vanessa wants, trans men like this man would be put into women's prisons, and most women who aren't TERFs would not be comfortable with trans men in their spaces.
It feeds into the fears that people already have where trans people are concerned. This situation just makes it look bad. They already fear that females' safety is at risk if they're around a transgender woman.
TERFs are afraid of having trans women in their prisons because they're afraid that trans women will attack them.
Demi Minor, she is facing time for some serious shit like manslaughter, 30 years. But to get 30 years, you probably don't have good, couldn't afford a good lawyer. And fucking, again, Ashley Diamond was in prison for fucking 10 years already on a 12-year sentence for trying to pawn off assault. You're probably not making that much money if you're trying to sell assault. So these things are punishing people who are more subject to violence and to, possibly losing their lives over how they identify, who they truly are. And especially like the rates of black trans women and their life expectancy, and a lot of them are poor, especially the ones that end up in prison because of ostracization and how our society works. Like,
Saying that people with penises are inherently more dangerous than people with vaginas because of their biology is a theory called biological essentialism, and this theory is backed by just as much scientific evidence as theories like phrenology and eugenics. No scientific evidence.
But that's what it took, was real men to stand up and be able to protect.
It is important to remember that just like on the outside, sexual assault in prison should not be confused with consensual sex between prisoners.
Having a penis doesn't make someone inherently more violent.
If you guys are not aware about the Don't Say the Gay bill in Florida, which is also connected to a lot of other things that started as the whole what about the kids thing. We don't want kids to be able to be transitioning and things like that. We don't want kids to be able to have surgery and hormones and all this fear-mongering around trans kids transitioning and things like that. And Florida, like a lot of other states, has moved to criminalize, in some cases, treatment of transgender children.
Especially when you're talking about, Jersey's not necessarily in the South, of course, but especially a state like Georgia and all these, like, with our history of fascism, history of slavery, and white supremacy and all these things, and patriarchy, and, the effeminate, and the gay and everything that we fear, especially, like, in prison. Clench up, don't drop the soap. These things that, like, have been normal to us and that we even feel for, like, a certain class of criminals is acceptable when it happens to them. Often, they're not the ones these things are happening to. Often, if someone went to prison for those particular things and they found out, they would kill them. They're not going to rape rapists, because how is that different from being a rapist?
We're going to murder murderers while we rape rapists.
Here's the thing, right? So if someone rapes someone I love...
Would you rape them?
No, hold on. I'd be so angry. I'd be so unbelievably furious. Like, I could almost see, in a lawless situation, I'd do anything to them. I might kill them, etc. But I wouldn't rape them, right?
Because you're not a rapist.
Yeah.
Right? You're not a rapist, because that's
Right.
sick. You have to be sick to rape someone. There's another reason why. If the judge goes guilty, rape them. That'd be the shortest line in the world for that judge.
You get me? But we just have bought into this myth. Meanwhile, the people who are mostly getting raped, especially in jails, are queer men with disabilities, mental disabilities especially, and trans women. So we got to think about how when we make these jokes, when our laws and our discussions basically say, yeah, that motherfucker, I don't care if they said it was consensual relationships. They got 2 people pregnant. Get that motherfucking penis haver out of that female prison and put him with the men. Someone else deserves to have fun. When we make, jokes like that, or we say this is the way things should be, because we ourselves are not comfortable with it, we're pushing people to be in danger.
Each year, over 200,000 people are raped or sexually assaulted while imprisoned in the United States. It also makes prison rape seem inevitable, which it's not. There are solutions to the prison rape epidemic, namely, keep people out of prison, which means working towards mass de-incarceration through a combination of decriminalization and a focus on education and rehabilitation programs instead of locking people up. But with every casual prison rape joke, it makes those goals more difficult to achieve.
And losing sight of the fact that, like, other countries, like Scandinavia, we've talked before about, I think in the David Lowe case, we talked about that Scandinavian prison called Halden, I believe, where prisoners are treated humanely. They have their own showers, their own fridges. They're treated like people who are going to get back into society. Because a lot of the time, these people are going to eventually come back into society. And what is going to happen to your society when people are brutalized and treated like, riffraff and not worth protecting, and, like, just surrounded by monsters? Those people who are both the victims, they might lose their life, or they come back even more vulnerable and more willing to do things they need to do to survive. And the people who are doing the victimizing, they're not good cop, good rapists or anything like that, versus a bad rapist. They're monsters who are being re-released back into society with no rehabilitation, no checking them on what the fuck is wrong with them. So, if we want a world full of acknowledging consent, if we want a world that isn't gravitating closer and closer to fascism with people wanting to ban fucking, you know, LGBT and trans and, you know, black education. Like, we gotta reevaluate the way we think, and we gotta stop thinking in just these, like, you know, archaic, like, eye for an eye type of ways.
Let me be crystal clear. What's happening right now is that the truth is advancing on the LGBTQ deception. Yahuwah, which is the Hebrew name for God, he hates pride. You guys are so full of pride, and you guys are sitting there puffing yourself up. You're so arrogant, and you make everything being offensive and repulsive, and that you're superior amongst all of us that are normal. And that is wrong. That's full of pride. And that is evil. It is not good.
That conversation has shifted from we don't want kids to be able to gain access to care to we don't want adults to gain access to care medically.
And all the perversion is being shown. And this is why we get crazy news stories like this. This is why we get men sitting there trying to pretend to be a woman.
Like, I'm a Christian, but come on. We could do better, right?
The bottom line is this. There's only two genders. There's no such thing as a trans anything. There's no transgenders. There's only two. There's no trans woman. There's only a woman. Only a man can get a woman pregnant, and only a woman can get pregnant. So all this confusion is all come about. And these people are evil, they're wicked, they're perverse. And this is what you get. You don't get anything good from it. What is right, and what is wrong is wrong.
I literally was in agreement about the fact that nobody with a penis should be in a woman's prison. I said that. But to turn around and to say that I don't exist,
you do not. You're a man.
Existing this
You are a man.
I'm giggling because, look, this is going to sound really harsh, but I think you have to be really disconnected from reality to think that the Republicans who sit around and want to fight against the most idealized transsexual are also going to be the people who look at you, the idealized transsexual, and say, oh, you're one of the good ones. You get to have access to hormones. You're one of the good ones. You did everything correctly. No, these people are terrified of the idea of a transgender person transitioning young, being able to assimilate into their gender, being able to be who they are and grow up to be the gender that they are. They're fighting against that. They're trying to make that less of a thing. So they're not going to hear that you did all the things correctly, you transitioned the right way, you said all the right, like, they don't care about that shit because they hate all of us. And I want for this to really sink in. They don't want us to be here. These people who are making these laws, they don't fuck with any of us.
It's a tragic story for me to be telling you, like, share, and subscribe. But these are important topics. It's not always going to be heavy. Like I said, this week, I'll be doing musicals, live streams. Listen, Disney, don't copyright the fuck out of me. Listen, I'm not making any money off this shit. I'm not big. I got like under 20 subscribers. We'll be fine. Copyright, don't strike. Alright? But yeah, we're gonna have fun on this channel too. But there are real serious shit that's affecting people in their reality. And it affects all of us too. Like, all this shit is a web, it's interconnected, and we all are liable to become the fly on the spider's web if we don't take care of each other instead of, you know, climbing over each other like crabs in a barrel, just trying to get our light in the sun, our chance at some sunshine through the cracks. Let's break off that fucking barrel top and bring the light down for everybody and free ourselves, essentially, instead of just waiting for us to be picked off for different things. Alright, thank you. I love you guys. Sorry it's been so long. Like I said, I've made this video last week originally. Alright, so this video's a little bit shorter. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to include links. I'm going to include some videos. Hopefully the editing this time will work. And let me stop talking because the video's already long enough. Alright? Bye.